humans have always sought power, status, and dignity. This pursuit has been a characteristic of humankind since ancient times and continues to this day. However, pinpointing the exact moment of this attainment is challenging. In this video, we'll explore the origins of politics and government. But first, let's recap our previous discussion. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch the prior video where we delved into the cradle of civilization and the regions where significant human advancements occurred. To summarize, the earliest civilizations emerged along four river valleys: the Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates in what is now Iraq, the Indus in what is now Pakistan, and the Yellow River in China, which is known for its communist government today. In the following discussion, we will examine the status of each of these four aspects, briefly exploring everything from lifestyle to geographical settings. Now is the time to delve more deeply into these areas and discover when humanity first savored the taste of power and steadfastly clung to it. Before delving into the discourse on politics and governance, it's essential to briefly examine the societal conditions of these four civilizations. Generally, they all faced comparable challenges in societal development. However, the demographic expansion in each civilization occurred in distinct regions. For instance, in Egypt, the population growth was predominantly in the northern part, where, due to the plentiful resources, the majority of the populace resided. In Mesopotamia, however, the situation differed. Historians' discoveries and existing evidence indicate that the Mesopotamian population primarily resided in the southern region. They also produced remarkable works that continue to amaze us today. For instance, the city of Ur, known as the birthplace of Prophet Abraham, is also referenced in the Bible. The city of Ur boasted one of the tallest brick temples of its era, a testament to its grandeur. Along the Yellow River, societal structures began to emerge around 2000 BC. Unlike the growth of large cities, this development predominantly took place in numerous small towns, leading to a widespread and comprehensive formation of society. Alongside the Indus River, the Harappan civilization exhibited a unique and remarkable order. This is considered strange because the majority of the houses were uniform in appearance and size. Despite the scarcity of information about the Harappans due to river flooding, historians have discovered 1,500 small cities with strikingly similar works and architecture. The largest of these cities is estimated to have had a population exceeding 130,000 individuals. Having explored the population growth at these four junctures, we now turn to our initial inquiry. Where did politics and governance originate? Envision a society emerging, expanding, evolving into a new entity, diversifying its industries, enhancing its production, and engaging in both export and import activities. Who has been managing these issues now? Within the same group, they became masters and wielded power, leading to the gradual formation of policies and the birth of governance strategies. We will now outline the governance styles of all four civilizations, albeit briefly and in general terms. To delve fully into each civilization would require a separate video for each. Following this, we will compare the political performance and governance of all four civilizations. It is wise to start with commonalities. All four civilizations have one similarity. Their similarity is in dictatorship and autocracy. The origins of this dictatorship can be traced back to the era mentioned at the start of the first video, when the weaker members of society sought assistance from those who were either more intelligent or physically stronger. Now, what was the work of these rulers? The responsibility of these rulers was to establish order within society. This order could mean creating irrigation systems or managing resources. It was at this juncture that the seeds of dictatorship were sown, as these rulers consolidated power, becoming the sole authority. Their decisions were final, dictating where ditches should be dug, and even controlling the sale and pricing of goods to the government. In essence, dictatorship and despotism were the hallmarks of governance at the dawn of human civilization. Now, let's delve into the specifics, beginning with Egypt. The primary concern for the Egyptian government is the potential for severe or insufficient river flooding. The former can inundate agricultural lands and ruin crops, while the latter can lead to deadly famines. This necessitated the construction of temples for food storage. For instance, the temple at Abu Simbel, built approximately 3,500 years ago, is estimated by archaeologists to have had the capacity to store food for 20,000 people. In the meantime, a question arises: why was the pharaoh considered a god by the Egyptians? According to earlier definitions, the pharaoh was merely an efficient storekeeper who could protect the people of Egypt during droughts through the tributes received and resource management. The answer to this question lies in the merging of two cultural practices: the crafting of figures and the creation of God statues. The belief was that gods should possess a physical form. Subsequently, priests subtly instilled the notion among the populace that the pharaoh was a deity, with a body and mind so sanctified that it served as a vessel for the gods. An example is an inscription discovered in Egypt, dating back to 1500 BC, which proclaims that Pharaoh is the Lord of the sun. It asserts that he brings more light to Egypt than the sun itself and bestows more verdancy upon the land than the Nile. This inscription illustrates the immense reverence in which the pharaoh was held. Consequently, the pharaoh's decree was regarded as divine, and opposition or disobedience was unthinkable. Today, the legacy of such autocratic rule, still perpetuated in the 21st century, has led to persistent class disparities observable worldwide. In Egypt, a similar situation unfolded where the impoverished societal class lacked bread, while the nobility had abundant food choices. The early graves in Egypt also reflect this disparity, as individuals were interred alongside their belongings, highlighting the inequality. This serves as a brief overview of the Egyptian governance structure during the early emergence of human power. Contrary to Egypt, which comprised a single territory under one pharaoh, Mesopotamia was fragmented into numerous city-states, each with its kingdom and rivals. Another distinction between Egypt and Mesopotamia is the presence of deities, contrary to the claim that Mesopotamia had a rich pantheon of gods. Perhaps for this reason, some of the earliest legal works in human civilization originated in Mesopotamia. For instance, laws and regulations dating back to 3000 BC were discovered in Ur, the birthplace of Prophet Abraham, where towering temples stood. However, the most detailed laws from around 2000 BC are attributed to King Lipit-Ishtar, who ruled over Sumer and Akkad. Among the writings from that era, one piece stands out for illustrating the distinction between thought and governance. It states that these laws intend to compel children to care for their parents and vice versa, or to quell dissent and lamentation, ultimately serving as a plea for justice, truth, and welfare. Now, contrast this mindset with that of the Egyptian thought process. Hammurabi, the renowned ruler of Babylon around 1700 BC, established some of the most extensive human rights laws of his era. Remarkably preserved, these laws were inscribed on a significant stone that also bore the king's symbol. It declared that any oppressed individual or anyone with a cause could approach his statue, in the hope that the stone might resolve their claim. One notable policy to mention is the employment of the unseen, with priests being accountable for divination and foretelling the future. Their tools of trade included the liver of a newly sacrificed sheep, the smoke of fire, and most significantly, celestial bodies. Ultimately, they determined 6 kings in Mesopotamia in a manner suggesting divine intervention, leading to a societal consensus on the selection of a king. This king's responsibilities encompassed organizing agriculture, storage, security, and other societal needs. This provides a broad overview of the politics and governance by the kings in Mesopotamia, around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Moving to the Yellow River in China, the governmental structure and monarchy bear resemblance to those earlier civilizations, characterized by autocratic rule, where the king's word is supreme, and he occupies the highest authority. Similarly, responsibilities like flood management and overseeing food supplies were part of the king's duties. For instance, there was a beloved legendary figure known as Emperor Yu the Great, who is highly esteemed in Chinese history for his management and construction of proper water channels, to which the history of their agriculture is indebted. The question that arises now concerns the geographical shape of China during that era. Generally, Chinese civilization exhibits remarkable coherence. For instance, around 2000 BC, the establishment of the Shang dynasty marked the creation of advanced tasks through a specialized order and division of duties. It is noteworthy that the governance style of this civilization bore similarities to earlier civilizations characterized by dictatorship and despotism. They also shared a similarity with Mesopotamia in the use of soothsayers. However, their occult practices differed slightly. For instance, they would use the bones of dead animals, heating them until they cracked. The pattern and type of the cracks were then interpreted to determine future events, the relationship between the king and the gods, and the king's duties. Let's discuss the intriguing and peculiar role of the Chinese emperor, a duty that is solely marriage, holding significant importance in China's history. For instance, there was a king around 1400 BC named Wuding, who had 64 wives. Setting aside these unusual roles, the primary duty of the king was to oversee religious ceremonies and prophecies. The king was viewed as an intermediary between God and the populace, a perspective that persists due to the influence of priestly opinions and politics. Comparing the two earlier civilizations, we observe the more complex political structures of Mesopotamia and China. In Egypt, the role was defined from the outset with the declaration of the pharaoh as a god. However, in the civilizations of China and Mesopotamia, such ideology was ingrained in the populace through political means. Entering the discussion of class differences, it becomes apparent that China faced significant disparities. The majority of society was impoverished, while the aristocratic class was exceedingly wealthy. For instance, in a tomb of one of their kings dating back to 1500 BC, archaeologists discovered thousands of gold and bronze axes, strands of costly shells, numerous hand-carved woolen treasures, and hundreds of renowned bronze artifacts from the Shang era, among others. This is merely one of the many tombs that have been unearthed. This information comes from the Yellow River in China. Moving to the Indus River in present-day Pakistan, as mentioned in the first video, there is scant information about the earliest civilizations along the Indus riverside. However, the available data suggest that the Harappans experienced unusual stability in their state structure, which could be likened to communism in some aspects. For instance, the layout of the cities, the architecture of the houses, and even the dimensions of the rooms showed a remarkable uniformity. The extent of dictatorship and tyranny was such that individuals were not permitted to build their own homes, with the government exerting significant control over society. However, there were also remarkable achievements, such as the advanced sewage systems beneath their cities, which were extraordinary for that era. Explorers have discovered sites akin to modern public baths, and their food storage methods differed from those of the three preceding civilizations, indicating a more modern approach. It could be argued that, had the Harappans not been struck by a flood leading to their extinction, theirs might have been one of the most remarkable historical eras. Curiously, archaeologists have yet to discover any royal tombs or even those of common people, raising the question of whether the Harappans, known for their cohesion, orderliness, and advancement, were governed by a single ruler or multiple kings. This brief overview also touches upon the politics and governance of the Indus civilization. Modern humanity is the beneficiary of the civilization that our forebears established during the zenith of the agricultural era. In this video, we discuss the influence of politics and agriculture, as well as four civilizations and their corresponding rivers. Two recurring themes emerged in these discussions: dictatorship and tyranny, and the exploitation of people's beliefs by governments. I hope you enjoyed watching this video.